today quickly is go over with you my background. I'm an urban wildlife biologist, but I ran a wildlife hotline for 18 years, first for the Fund for Animals and then for the Humane Society of the US. So I'm going to try and share with you just sort of some of our problem-solving strategies, and then launch into how we try and help people resolve problems that are occurring this time of year in particular, where people have all kinds of nuisance wildlife problems. So yes, I saw a thumbs up, so I guess this is working. So anyway, just to begin with, people are alarmed now in your state, everywhere, when they see this in their backyards, because they're not used to seeing this kind of forest creature in suburban areas. But the reality is we're developing so much land, and these animals are so adaptable that they are getting used to us, and they're moving into our landscape, and they're eking out a living and doing quite well. But many people are not used to seeing foxes and bears and different animals that they've never seen before. So there's a lot of potential for conflict, and a lot of conflict that has been arising. This is an example of how adaptable these animals are. This is a coyote that actually learned how to ride the light rail in Portland and go from place to place, and would jump on the train and became a well-known figure. These animals are smart. They kind of do better in our landscapes, our developed landscapes, than in the deep, dark woods. And they're really finding a way to live with us. The problem is we need to better adjust to living with them. The problem is that we create way too many attractants for wildlife. I mean, people called our hotline and we're furious. You know, why is this animal here? They shouldn't be here, you know, in a fury. But the reality is we provide so much food, intentional or unintentional, that it's no surprise they come for this buffet. And we leave holes in our houses, and it's perfect denning or nesting spots for them. So of course they're going to take advantage. And we even create an underground roadway system for animals through our sewer system. So, you know, we've created a perfect world for them in suburban and urban areas. But that's where the conflicts arise. And that's a large part of what I do, is try and help people in these types of areas, and help municipalities and politicians and community decision makers figure out ways to resolve conflicts. People love to feed animals, as you may know. I love to feed animals, but it brings them to our front door. It brings them to the back door. I mean, when there's food, they come, right? And, you know, my big message to you all is that most animal problems are really people problems. They're caused by our behavior. And so what we try and do is root out the cause of the problem, what is actually creating it, and that's where we need to fix it. But for many people, what you see on the right, they would say is an animal problem. But I would contend to you, no, this is a totally human-created problem. People have a lot of problems this time of year with animals coming into their homes, their attics, their sheds, their foundations, even their interior living space. The problem is that homes are created in a certain way. They were not built to be wildlife proof. So there's lots of gaps, there's lots of entry points, there's lots of points where pipes and other things enter homes that have gaps that animals can easily access to get in, and they do. Hence, we get a ton of calls on the hotline, or we used to, about animals in the home this time of year. But they're looking for a nice denning spot for winter, and we afford them all these cavities. Oops. So when I ran the wildlife hotline for the Humane Society of the US, we handled over 6,500 calls. We had 4 basic call types concerning orphaned animals, injured animals, cruelty, and nuisance situations. Primarily, the orphaned animal situations occurred in the spring and summer, but we still have squirrels with us right now, and they have babies in the late summer, early fall. So we still have orphaning issues occurring What we found, which was great, was that 75% of the calls could be resolved just with good advice alone. We didn't need to call for nuisance trappers. We didn't need to call for outside help. We could just walk people through the solutions. But the biggest challenge is getting the caller to give you all the relevant details. And running a hotline for 18 years, I continually tore my hair out over that, particularly because people, when they've done something what they perceive to be as wrong, they don't tell you. They tell you the details they think you want to know, and they leave out the critical ones. So the first thing we try and determine on a hotline call is the animal really a problem, or is the problem based on misconceptions or exaggerated fears? For example, people will see these animals in their backyard and decide they are a problem just because of their presence alone. They are there, they might be about to do something terrible. So their fears kind of drive those calls. We always have to confirm the species because people really don't know what they're seeing. Is the animal what it's supposed to be? We have to confirm the species, the age, the identity. For example, we get a lot of calls about eagles that turn into seagulls because, right, they all have the white head and the yellow beak. And we've sent many a rescuer out for the totally wrong animal. So now we ask people always to send us pictures and video. Back when I did the hotline 20 years ago, we didn't have iPhones. We had to base our assessments totally on what the caller told us over the phone. We had no way of seeing it. We always have to assess the circumstance. Where was the animal found? How long has it been there? I mean, people panic, but has the animal been there 2 minutes or 2 days? Or cats, dogs, or people involved in that animal's plight? What occurred around that situation? What could be contributing to it? We bugged people to really give us all the details. What is the exact context? What may have created the situation that they are calling us about? I mean, here on the left, you see that animal is clearly stuck, but you know, the middle is cat caught birds and other animals, and on the right are baby skunks that have fallen into a window well and can't get out. So we really bug people to give us all the details so we can determine what's going on. We're always wary of the caller's interpretation. For example, this call came in as a skunk without a head attached to a dumpster. And it was like, oh my God, is this a cruelty call or what the heck is it? What it really was the skunk had pushed his head into the drain hole of the dumpster. And here he is. He smelled those juju fruits and he stuck his little head in. The dumpster was full of great smells, but he couldn't get it out. Now that drain hole is to release water from the dumpster, but it got that little skunk's head entrapped. So it took a whole lot of olive oil and a whole lot of massage to get that little guy out. But, you know, that was a headless skunk call, a potential cruelty call. So not an olive oil call. So really people don't understand what we found over many years. They don't understand what motivates animals. So we need to explain to them for every weird behavior they're experiencing what is really going on. But of course, we need to figure it out. And we need to understand the circumstance and be able to diagnose what's going on. It's kind of like being a detective. You have to ask the person a lot of questions, understanding they have a particular psychology, and then get to the root cause of what's going on. For example, here's a home in New Haven, Connecticut, where I'm from, where a woman was held captive for 4.5 days by a psychotic squirrel. And this squirrel kept running at her windows, running at her doors. When she tried to get out, he would not allow her to leave the house. She was an elder, she was 83, she was really upset. So we asked her, tell us about the squirrel. You know, what's he like? She described him. He seemed fine, healthy squirrel in every other way. Then we asked her, tell us what's going on. What has happened in this animal's world? Has anything changed? Has anything happened to your home, to the immediate environment? And she said, well, no, but my lazy ass nephew finally patched some holes for me, you know, did some home repair. Boom, that was our tip off. And it turned out that this lovely nephew had closed off a dryer hose vent, and the squirrel had actually parked her babies inside. So she was going nuts trying to get back to her young. And that's why she was attacking this woman's house and windows. She was just trying to get back to them in any way. So we had her open up the plugs that had been put in. And sure enough, the squirrel, after all that time, ran in, jumped into the opening, grabbed babies and took them away after. And it was after a number of days where clearly they were compromised, but that was what she was after. So it made sense. So our approach is really trying to understand, you know, what is going on with the animal's behavioral ecology? And then we try and come up with solutions. For example, you know, this is a squirrel, raccoons jump into dumpsters. Whoops, let me show you. They jump into dumpsters and they can't get out. We get calls from garbage companies. We get calls from people. Oh my God, they're stuck. What do we do? Can you send a trapper? Can you send an animal control officer with a snare hook? How do we get them out? Well, the reality is they jumped in, smelled real good, lots of garbage, lots of food, but their hindquarters are great for climbing, but not for jumping. They don't have strong hindquarters. So when they jump into a dumpster, they cannot jump out. They get stuck. And so the easy solution without traps and without snares is just to put in a branch, give them something to climb out on, and they will happily do it because they don't want to live in a dumpster. So we tell people all the time, you know, calm down, just put in something they can climb out of, a thick limb, and boom, they're happy to get out. In a similar vein, we get a number of calls from people who have skunks that go into the garage, they smell the garbage, and then the people who live there are absolutely panicked because now there's a skunk in their garage. They feel they have to hire a trapper for a lot of money. What are they going to do? The reality is the skunk went in for food. They are primarily nocturnal. When they get food or don't get food, they're going to conk out during the day and then come to life again at night. So easy solution is just leave them alone. Flour is your best tool. And you have to time it properly. You put a band of flour in front of the garage door. The goal is to catch the tracks of the skunk when he leaves, because when the skunk wakes up, he's going to want to leave. Put down a band of flour, see his tracks, and you're fine. The problem is people tend to open the garage door during the day because that's when they are active, and then they close it at night. And we have countless people who have skunks in the garage and they're like, they're still here, they're still here. But it's like they open the garage door at the wrong time. You have to open it at night when they're active and when they want to get out, not during the day when they're sound asleep. So a lot of our advice has to do with not giving people just the right tools, but the right timing. Here is an example. We always try and reunite when we get orphan wildlife calls. We always try and reunite wild animals with their mother. If the mother is alive, how do I do this? I'm trying to, I want to play this video clip. Okay. Oh. Thank you. Perfect. So this is an example of how we reunite mothers with young. These babies were in a home for 3 days after the homeowner plugged the hole in the siding of the home. And John Griffin from Humane Society, Humane Wildlife Solutions said, hey, let's see if mom's still around. A squirrel was very interested, and 3.5 days later, here she is. They put the babies out, and you'll see mom is coming, or whoever this is, and seeming to know this baby and grabbing it and bundling him up. This is typical maternal behavior. And it's an example of how mothers want their young back, and they will wait. So see how she's bundling him up, a little scarf over the neck with the tail. And she is going to now take this youngster to a new location up this tree. And of course, we wonder, like, why didn't she do that in the first place? But quite honestly, people's attics sometimes afford a better nesting site than a hollow tree. They're warmer, they're cozy, they have nice insulation. But there she went right up the tree. So we always try and reunite when we're involved in any situation with orphaned young. If there's any chance the mother's around, we try to reunite them with the mother. All right, quiz time. I want to see how good you guys are. All right, here's the hotline call we got. We're cutting down a tree. Baby squirrels fell out on the ground. The mother ran away. We left them out for 3 days, like you told us to, but she never came back. Why? There's a really good reason she didn't come back. They left them out for 3 days straight during the day. What went wrong? Any ideas? Yes. Great thought. Sometimes they are, but not in this case. Anybody else? Come on. Any ideas that even, yes. She'd only, well, remember this is a squirrel, but you're onto something. You are definitely onto something, but remember squirrels are active by day, not at night. But my hint to you is you are onto something. Come on, somebody. What's that? Well, normally we would never leave squirrels out at night because squirrels sleep at night and predators might get them, but there's something connected to what you said. You're getting close. What might it be? Any idea? What's that? She would be looking during the day for food, but she'd also be looking for her young during the day. They are active by day, but not at night. There's something you guys are getting close to, but not quite there. Any idea? Oh, okay. Okay. The question, I'm sorry. Yes, we're trying to figure out why this squirrel, the baby squirrels fell out of a tree, the mother ran off. Why did the mother not retrieve them? And we're trying to figure out why that might be, because she seemed to be around according to the caller, but something went wrong. And we're hinting at, you know, different things. Any other ideas you guys might have as to why? Yes. She may not have a place to take them back to because a tree was cut down. That is excellent. However, usually animals have other nest sites in their home habitat that they can use. Usually they have an alternative. So it would be rare for them not to, but that's a great thought. Anybody else? Anything else? And it's definitely you. Some of you came close to it, but I will tell you then, the reason was because the hotline caller who handled this call believed what the caller said. And remember, I said, don't trust people, what they tell you, it may be incorrect. Well, the squirrel they saw running off was not the mother. This was actually whoops, here, let me show you. This was the baby that they thought was a baby squirrel. It was not a baby squirrel. It was a baby raccoon. So they were leaving the baby out by day, which is when squirrels are active, and bringing the baby in at night. Raccoons are active by night. So because it was a baby raccoon, they should have left it out at night for the mother to come retrieve. So it was a case of mistaken identity. So again, it's whenever we handle hotline calls, we have to confirm every detail because people do not know what they're seeing. Here's one more. Here's a hotline call. There's an orphan baby squirrel, fell from a tree. I put him outside right by the tree, as your website said to do, but the mother never came back. Why? There's a really good reason, but can you think of why it might be? Any ideas? Again, don't trust people on anything. Any ideas? Yes. What's that? That's a great suggestion. Was it actually a baby? Yes, it was. There it is. There it is. Any other ideas? Think hard. Yes.
Have a human's scent on it?
That's an excellent thought. Was there a human scent on it? With most mammals, they don't care. So yes, you had a, what's that? Was it the wrong tree? That's also really good, because if you don't put the baby back where the mother would expect to find it, she might not find it. So that's an excellent thought, but not in this case. The photo, I'm sorry, it's a little dark. That is the baby at night, because the people were frustrated. They were like, he's still here. Okay, there's a really good reason this baby was still here. Any other thoughts? Yes.
The person bring the baby to the tree and then immediately take the baby back away from the mother.
Okay, that's an excellent thought. That usually happens. People will see an animal and they'll say it's an orphan, and they decide in 1 minute it's an orphan, and they don't give the mother a chance to grab it. Excellent thought, not in this case though. Yes? Is there no mother? Why do you think there's no mother? Well, they put him outside. You're right. There's an orphan, but do you have proof there's no mother? You're thinking, okay, well, I will give you the answer. The answer is, and you're onto it, the person did everything we told them to do, but what people do when they think they did something wrong, they don't tell you. What they did, they kept this baby for 3 weeks, and then they went to put him out when he was perishing. But they never told us they'd had him for 3 weeks. So we were telling them, put him back, put him back. They're like, oh, mom's not coming. But they did not tell us that critical detail. Had we known it had been 3 weeks, we would have known the mother had given up, and we would have known he's truly orphaned and needs to come into care. So again, people are tricky. Human psychology is tricky. And that's what we deal with on the hotline. So those are some of the issues. Okay. With nuisance wildlife conflicts, people always feel they've done their part. If they set a trap for an animal, they want the animal gone. Our biggest challenge is trying to tell people that people are in love with trapping animals, setting a box trap. They don't realize it's not nice. When you take an animal, you trap them, you dump them somewhere far away. That poor animal, if it's a mother, she has babies somewhere she's trying to get to, you've dumped her in a new area. She doesn't know where food is, water is. She doesn't know where her escape corridors are. She's like completely at a loss, as if I dumped you somewhere with no money, no anything, no clothes, like, hi, it looks good here, it's beautiful, have fun. So relocated animals often do poorly. They try and beeline for home. They're beaten up by resident animals. They're hit by cars. They don't know where they are. They don't know where their escape corridors are. So trapping wild animals and just moving them someplace that we think is nice is not necessarily a humane solution. And the result is high mortality, not only for the animals that we relocate, but often in spring and summer, and even now with squirrels and raccoons, they have dependent young that they've been removed from who are going to die. The traditional approach by pest control, nuisance wildlife control, is to set traps, remove animals. And this is something we do counter in our daily lives, because they often capture non-target animals because the traps are baited, and they may capture the animal that is or is not causing the problem. And it's also taking animals away from their home habitat and their young. Oops. So trap and removal is counterproductive, because any vacated niche you take an animal out of is refilled by other animals. And often if it really treats the symptom, not the source of the problem, because if there's a food source, more animals are going to move in, there's going to be population turnover. You don't solve problems by removing animals. You solve the problem by removing the source of the problem. This is the progressive approach in nuisance wildlife control. Eliminate the problem, not the animal. Identify what's attracting the animal and deal with that. Evict animals as a family unit. Often you'll have a family of squirrels or raccoons in a home, in an attic or a chimney. You want to evict them so that the mom takes her young with her when she goes. And we have tools like one-way doors and reunion boxes, which I'll show you to help with that. We want animals to stay in their home habitat. We don't want to transfer them to areas they don't know where they're freaked out. We don't want to transfer them where they might bring disease to new areas. And in the end, once we've moved them out of a dwelling, we want to exclude them from it using exclusion methods such as you see here to keep them from returning. So on the top, you see a one-way door, which you'll see in action, where it has a flap where the animal can get out but not get back in, which is brilliant for getting animals out of homes and attics and areas where they're not wanted. And then you fence them off from where their entry points so they can't get back in and they go somewhere else. So that's the right approach in our minds, not just continually trapping animals, dumping them somewhere or killing them, and then expecting the problem to end. I want to show you how this works. Here's the, oops, let me see if I can. I'm not being successful. Oops, or maybe I am. Yep, oh, I am. Here's a squirrel reunion. Oh, I'm sorry. This is an example of the one-way doors, which you can see the animals can get out of. And the mother will bring her young as long as the young are old enough to follow her. If they're too young, this is where I'm hesitant to recommend one-way doors too much. If the babies are not mobile, you can set up a one-way door, the mom gets out, but not the babies, and it's a disaster. But here's a squirrel. They easily get out and then they can't get back in. And it's much less traumatic for them than being trapped and sitting in a trap and being hauled off miles away. But we tell people you need to make sure the babies are old enough to get out with the mother. Sometimes they don't like to be booted out and they try and get back in. They're determined. And then mom has to come along and say, guys, the gig is up. We are out of here. Here's one. There's a reunion box. I know it's you can't see too well, but the babies are inside that box and the mother has been booted out through a one-way door. And now she's coming into that reunion box. She found her baby and she's taking him off. You get a really good picture. See, mom can lift the flap, but the babies are too little to get out. So the mother can pull them out of the reunion box and take them out one at a time to take them to a new habitat. And here's another example. Again, the flap is a wonderful thing. The squirrel is taking her babies out one at a time. So it's a very humane ecological solution. We keep the animals in their habitat, but boot them out of dwellings where people don't want them. Let me, hold on, sorry. Here, I didn't know this one was happening, but here is one where the mother just grabbed her young. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what's going on here. Yes, please. It's like every video I've ever had is now trying to show you what's going on. They're great, but we don't need them all. Yeah, we could. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Now I'm going to jump. I swear that the world of cyberspace defies me every time. Okay, now I'm going to jump to some issues that are occurring right now and how we're trying to resolve them. With squirrels, whoops, let me back up here. They eat a lot of seeds and nuts. They eat a bunch of things. They're very highly strung and very erratic, which is why when a squirrel gets stuck in a house, like he'll fall through the chimney and go through the house, they run absolutely all over the house, but they will not run out an open door. They just get too freaked out to behave rationally. So this time of year, they have two birthing seasons. Squirrels have litters in the early spring and again in late summer, fall. So right now we have squirrel babies in people's attics. They're way too little to be withstanding winter. It's crazy, but they are there. They have two types of nests. They have the leaf nests in trees called drays, and then they also have cavities in hollow trees, and they also prefer attics. Attics are better than hollow trees. They are much warmer. Right now, squirrels are checking out attics and flues for wintering, and they always hit bird feeders really hard right now. This is an example in an attic. We will have squirrels right now with teeny babies, which is insane because it's too cold for them to be there. Here's how we help people evict them. What we try and do is all animals look for a nice, quiet, dark place to raise their young. So if we change the conditions and make it not peaceful, not quiet, not dark, and a little freaky, they will move their young. So there's something called the squirrel evictor you see on the bottom right. It's essentially a glorified strobe light, and it just freaks out a squirrel enough that they will leave and take their babies with them. The thing is, we need to freak them out enough that they'll take their babies with them, but not so much that they just leave and never come back. But these strobe lights and the squirrel evictor seem to work really well. Right now, people are cutting down trees in spring and fall. People do a lot of tree cutting. Squirrels are in the hollows now raising young. It's a big problem for us. We always try and, again, give the mother a chance to retrieve them. Sometimes if there's cats around, we'll try and tack them to the tree, as you see in the right-hand part of the picture, put them in something so that she can get at them, but they're off the ground. But people always say to me, how do I know she'll come back? Well, here's a perfect example. This is a squirrel, her baby's on the ground, and a dog has gotten the baby, right? Look what mom does. She tackles that dog for her baby. I mean, this is how maternal they are. And sure enough, she gets her baby back. So the maternal instinct, look at his pathetic look. The maternal instinct is strong. All mammals really want their young. They want them back. And that's something we try and work with. If they need rehabilitation, if they're cold and skinny, if they're injured, we want to get them to a wildlife rehabilitator. Also, if they're running up to people. Squirrels generally don't do that, but when they've lost their mother, they'll run up to anything that moves. So that's how we know they're needing care. Oops, okay, bird feeders. We have a big problem right now. People have bird seed out, squirrels like get into them. Stovepipe baffles are the best. The squirrels kind of climb up into them and can't get at the seed. They need to be 4 feet off the ground and away from anything that the squirrel can jump onto. But that is the best solution. But squirrels are really good at defying whatever we do to protect bird seed. Squirrels in chimneys right now, we're getting a lot of calls about that. The problem with squirrels, they look for a hollow tree to den in. They see a chimney, they jump into it. They don't realize that the liner has sheer walls and they can't climb out. So they're stuck. When squirrels are in chimneys right now, they are totally stuck. And the best solution is to run a thick rope down the flue that they can climb out on. And you drape the rope on the side of the house, they can get out and climb down the house. But unlike raccoons that can shimmy up and down chimneys, squirrels are basically stuck there. Now I'm going to jump to bears. Bears are a big issue here, aren't they? More. Okay, to the west. In Connecticut, we are raging with bear issues. So I wanted to talk about them. Many of the calls we get are fear-based people. Dr. Lynn Rogers, who is an expert on bears, said people interpret any sort of growl or gaze as the bear is coming to get me. And that is a thing with our psychology. We interpret what we see, which may or may not be correct. In terms of the relevant natural history, bears have a huge repertoire of behaviors to deal with each other. And these may include, lunging at each other, popping their jaws, doing all kinds of bluff behaviors to tell each other, I'm here, I'm dominant, go away. But we have to distinguish between those ritualized defensive behaviors and what's truly aggressive. And, predatory behavior, which is something that people are all concerned about, it's never accompanied seemingly by this huffing, jaw popping, lunging type of behavior. It's more focused stalking, maintaining eye contact, and going after what it perceives to be prey. But there's a lot of conflicting information in terms of what you should do if you encounter a black bear. Do you fight back? Do you climb? What do you do? And the reality is you need to speak their language. Again, think like a bear. How do bears communicate with each other? How can you communicate with them? You want to be big and dominant. You want to be assertive. You want to put your jacket over, your shoulders. You want to get big, hold up your hands. Do not act like prey and run. Because for a bear, if you run, then you're prey. You don't want to scream. You don't want to play dead. With a grizzly, you might play dead, but not with a black bear. You want to look him in the eye, back away slowly, show him respect, and keep your eye on him. But yet you want to be big. You want to say, I am important, I'm big, I am not, going to be your victim. And so if you sort of play along with the bear's type of communication and understanding, you will be fine. In terms of relevant natural history, bears are very food motivated. They adapt to our landscape all too well. They can detect carcasses 10 miles away. They have a supreme sense of smell. They feed on berries, grasses, all kinds of things. They're omnivores. They're fattening up for winter right now. They don't truly hibernate. They go into a state of torpor where their metabolism, their heart rate, everything slows down. But if there's a warm spell or any reason to wake up, they can, unlike a hibernating animal that is so closed down that they will not reawaken. The problem is right now, there has been a big failure of berry and tree acorn mast, so that these animals normally would be fattening up on so many berries and nuts, and those are not available right now. It's a bad year. Last year you could not walk without stepping on acorns everywhere. This year you can hardly find one. So bears are sort of reaching out farther and wider for food that they need to build the calories they need prior to winter. So, and then they mate in the spring, but they have this delayed implantation of the embryo, which is kind of interesting. It's almost like they may be fertilized, but the embryo will not implant in the uterus unless the mother is fit enough, unless she has put on enough calories to sustain the pregnancy. If she has, the cubs are born in midwinter, and they actually nurse on her while she's asleep. They're born, and they only stay with her. They're born at 2 months. But during this stage, prior to going into torpor, bears need to gain 20,000 calories a day to gain enough weight to make it through the winter and through a pregnancy, which means they're foraging about 20 hours a day, which means if they can't find the acorns and berries they need, they're in people's backyards. So this is a year where we're experiencing a lot of conflicts. Bears are coming into people's yards. They sense anything, pet food, garbage, whatever. They're trying to put on the calories, and there's a lot of conflicts going on. And it's a free buffet. One of the big problems is we provide so much food for these animals. We provide trash that they can get into. We provide bird seed, barbecue grills, fruit trees, compost. There's a lot, outdoor pet food, a lot of sources of food that we give to them. So our responsibility is to try and eliminate those. And there's a lot of, as you see in the lower right-hand corner, there's a lot of really good bear-proof garbage containers that can be gotten to keep bears out, but also just simple things for trying to teach people. Put your garbage out in the morning of trash pickup, not, for any longer than that. So you don't entice these animals who have a very keen sense of smell. We want to just eliminate the food source and eliminate the problem. And so, a big problem is once you have a fed bear, they turn into a habituated bear. They start coming for food and then they expect it. In Connecticut, we have 5,700 complaints, and pretty much all of them, or the majority of them, were trash and bird feeder related. And those are the biggies we have to resolve. I mean, there are a number of communities that have really worked well on reducing bear conflicts. Yosemite is a perfect example. They had thousands of bear complaints, and they initiated a program where they had bear-proof trash cans, and they required that people store food in storage lockers, and their complaints plummeted. And there's a company called, or not a company, a nonprofit called bearsmart.com, and they have a number of communities working with them to reduce bear problems that have been highly successful. So, it can be done, but bears are very, they're very agile. And we used to tell people, put your bird's feeder on a cable. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's not good advice anymore. They are really good at getting at what they want. And so now we're telling people, rather than put them on cables, take down your bird feeder. You've got to do it March, November, attract birds in other ways. You really can, you can put in bird baths, you can put in natural foods that birds would like, natural flowers. There are other ways to attract birds that don't involve bears. Bird bath is a great example. Bears also go after beekeepers, and that's a huge problem. They destroy beehives. Electric wire fencing really does work well to keep bears out of beehives and other places. Here's some examples of it, how they have to do it. 5-strand electric fence. And there's even this bee fortress on the right that a man created that he swears is bear proof. It is so well fortified. There is no way a bear can get in, but there are certain minimal standards. There has to be a certain joule and volts to keep bears out of certain areas. But beekeepers seem to be better by and large about protecting their beehives. What we're having trouble with more is chicken coops, chicken keepers. But there are other deterrents around homes that people use. There's something called an unwelcome mat on the right. It's electrified. When a bear steps on it, it gets electric shock. And then on the left is the scarecrow, which is good for bears and any other animal. You can set its motion to detect a range of activity, and it's hooked up to a hose. So when any animal comes within that range, it blasts them with water. And I've talked to a number of people who have so much fun setting it for a certain range, and their husband comes along to do something in the garbage, and bam, gets blasted, and they have so much fun. But for bears, it does seem to work somewhat. These are just tools for bears and other wildlife. But the challenges are, we need community-based programs. We need everybody doing the same thing to keep bears away. And that is all about just managing food, because that's what they come for. And if the food enticements are removed, the bears will not be there. But it is a big challenge. Getting people to change their behaviors is a huge challenge. People don't like to do that. There's a growing number of people with backyard chicken coops and backyard chickens, and they're free ranging and they're not protected. That entices bears. Bird feeding enthusiasts. People do not want to stop putting up bird feeders. They love seeing the birds at the bird feeders. That's a huge problem. Here's a great resource for you, bearsmart.com. If you're interested, they have a lot of great solutions, but we have challenges with managing bears in this area. I'm going to, where are we on time?
We're kind of wrapping up. It's 5:12. So.
I'm going to be quick. Raccoons. Okay. They're highly intelligent, nocturnal, active when it makes sense. They're very good climbers. They fit in tight spaces, but they're fattening up for winter now. And they're looking at our structures for winter denning. Here's an example. Again, a one-way door is great for them if they're in an attic. Let's see. I might skip it as two. We are out of time, but they climb really well. They're in chimneys, either with young or just with themselves. Chimneys are as good as a hollow tree. They smoke shelf. Number 3 is where they will have their babies or hang out for the winter. So if they have babies, we wait till they're 6 weeks old, because the mother will move them out on her own, because it's really hard for her to lug them up and down a chimney. They can't navigate it by themselves. So we give deterrents. Again, animals like a nice, quiet, dark place, peaceful place to be and to raise their young. So we change the conditions. We apply what's called a multi-sensory deterrent strategy, where we put a bad smell like cider vinegar. I know that says ammonia, but we don't do that anymore because it's noxious. We apply a radio, rock music, rap music, just something to throw them, and they will leave. And once they're gone, the big final step is to prevent them from returning through some sort of exclusion, like a chimney cap. And we did a study when I ran a hotline of how many people had raccoons in the chimney, how many of them went ahead and got a chimney cap to prevent the problem in the future. And it was like 15%. It was like out of sight, out of mind. Once the problem was resolved, they refused to go ahead and come up with and implement the permanent solution. But it's really important. And it's important to do it consistently. Like, here's an example. Somebody put a cap on one flue, but not the other. I mean, really, what are you thinking? Raccoons in garbage. People need to, they used to need to have good fitting lids. The animal stopper garbage can is excellent. It has built-in bungee cords. It's been tested against raccoons and works really well. Sometimes on the lower right, we encourage people to build these storage containers for their garbage. So put the garbage in it, secure it with a latch and a snap hook, and keep the garbage secure till pickup. But the point is, if animals can get into garbage, they're going to keep coming and develop bad behaviors. So there are many ways to end that, and will stop the problematic animal behavior. Oops. Okay, and outdoor pet feeding. We have tons of people who feed outdoor cats and get mad at the raccoons for coming. They've got to, put it out for a finite period of time and clean it up. Possums are only native marsupial. They have they're omnivores. They eat everything people don't like, and they have a bluff routine, which looks like rabies, but it isn't. And then they play dead if everything else fails. They don't tend to get rabies. They seem to have low body temperature, which does not sustain rabies, but people think they have rabies because they shake and drool and do all kinds of things that looks like rabies. But our calls with them are primarily based on they're ugly. People don't like their looks and they decide they're a problem, or they have rabies concerns. So they're pretty much easy to deal with. But again, dealing with possums, often they're in trash and they don't. Put a can on its side, they're going to hiss and drool and stay there forever as long as you're there. So leave. And then they will go maybe 2 hours later, but they do not leave when they perceive a threat. That's just part of their, psychology and mentality. But we always tell people, you want them to stay. These animals go around, there are scientific studies which show they just gather so many ticks and gobble them up. So if you have possums in your yard, they're actually hoovers for ticks, and it's a form of tick control. Okay, why do woodpeckers? Oh, I will wrap it up. Oh, Alan knows. Let's go way too late. Can I finish with woodpeckers? Then I'm totally done. Woodpeckers are drilling on houses right now. They're looking for food. They want to. Some of them are excavating a nesting or roosting cavity. And in spring and summer, they drill to get a girl because they don't sing to get a girl, they drill. But there's woodpeckers are going nuts right now. On the top right, you'll see a woodpecker excavating a hole. Lower right, that's in California, not here. That's an acorn woodpecker. They drill tons of holes in houses and put acorns in them. We don't have that problem, thank goodness. But we're primarily dealing with food issues right now. Here are the solutions. There's irritape, which is iridescent tape that people can put out to scare them away. There's scare eye balloons, which have a predator image. There's netting, which is what I've done. I've netted my entire house because they go after it. And then there are attack spiders, which are these devices that when they hear a woodpecker drilling, they drop down and scare the heck out of them. It was inspired by Halloween. So there are tools available, and there's so many other issues I want to share with you, but we don't have time, but I want to take your questions.
Laura? Okay, so it's 1 o'clock. If people need to leave, that's fine. Stick around for minutes and ask questions.
Hi, well, we have a groundhog in the backyard, and you didn't mention that. I haven't seen it, but my sister saw it once, but there is a mound and a hole, and then there's another hole nearby, and some months ago, she Googled stuff and she did try putting like white vinegar down and stuff, but I don't know. I guess it sleeps in the winter, and we'll see what to do in the spring, or what should we do? Yeah.
Well, okay, regarding
You want this one?
regarding the groundhog, soon the groundhog is being hibernated. There won't be any sign of the groundhog.
Right.
But for now, what you can do, there are ways to convince groundhogs. They're very nervous. There's a product called pepper-based repellent around their den, along with these mylar balloons that have big scary eyes like SpongeBob. Okay, they get scared of that. You put that around their den and sprinkle the critter around the den, and two things combined will get them to move to another place. I'm here now slumbering, which I doubt.
Because it's warm. Right.
But here I believe, or SpongeBob. I'm a big believer in SpongeBob. Scares the woodchucks away, and because they feel like there's a predator around all the time. Scary, they move up.
It's a
Regular,
thing.
get at a garden store.
Oh, okay.
It works very well. We tested it and we're.
All right. So in.
For
Right.
now, they're gonna be some.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any strategies for talking to people when you talk to people online, like how to convince them, like change their mind about things that like, about like being scared of the animal that's actually not scary, or things like that are changing their entire mindset, not just like talking to you?
Yes, and I think you've. Can't just tell them to relate. And sometimes I try to get them to understand. Of you as you are of them. I mean, they're not reacting to be vicious. They're just trying to protect their young. This is a mother, she's trying to protect her babies just like you would. She's not trying to be vicious. The one time it was funny where I had a man who was very aggressive and he was determined to kill this raccoon. And I said, that's too bad you want to kill her, because I had a 90-year-old woman who just he wouldn't let this raccoon out of the trap. I said, I had a 90-year-old woman who just released the animal out of the trap and she had no problem, but I'm sorry you're having such an issue with it. And he was like, the 90-year-old woman let raccoon out of her trap and I can't. And he was like, I can do it. And within moments, that raccoon was out of the trap. So sometimes it's the psychology of just finding out what they're really scared of and sort of trying to empower them or get them to relate to the animal, because they see the animal as vicious. The animal is out to do harm. And if you say, this is a mother animal, she is behaving the way she is because she's trying to protect her babies. I'm sure you would too. I mean, you have children, right? And sort of getting them to see that it's maternal behavior. It's not nastiness, it's protection. But you really try and make the animal more, humanize the animal.